In our last story, we uncovered how a wave of US tariffs sent shockwaves through the global economy, crippling Taiwanese chipmakers, straining Japanese supply chains, and igniting protests in Brazil. But beyond the headlines lies a deeper impact, real lives unraveling. Today we follow the human fallout, a Tokyo engineer laid off overnight, a Brazilian farmer watching harvests rot, a factory worker in Taiwan caught in a trade war she never chose. This is part 2, where economic policy meets personal crisis. In the world of global trade, power dynamics often shift in the blink of an eye. As the US flexes its economic muscle with the 2025 tariffs, many countries find themselves at the mercy of American trade policies. The resulting consequences aren't just confined to government offices or corporate boardrooms. They trickle down to affect everyday people, businesses, and families. The American strategy: tariffs as a weapon for economic leverage. When the US began imposing tariffs in 2025, it wasn't just a political maneuver, it was a calculated power play to regain control over the global market. From steel to technology to agriculture, the US used tariffs to target foreign competition and reshape trade relationships. But behind these headlines, people like Emma, a small business owner in Michigan, felt the immediate effects. Emma runs a small manufacturing company that exports products to Europe and Asia. The first wave of tariffs hit us hard, she shares. My costs went up overnight. We rely on cheap imports for some of our raw materials. And with tariffs in place, we're seeing costs rise across the board. We had to decide: raise our prices or eat the losses. For Emma, like many small business owners, the US's aggressive tariff strategy posed a significant challenge. While larger corporations may have been able to absorb the increased costs, Emma and her team had to make tough decisions. For her, it meant sacrificing profits to maintain competitive pricing, but for others in the industry, it might mean laying off workers or scaling down operations. The tech wars: how tariffs on China are reshaping the industry. In the tech world, the tariffs on Chinese goods, especially electronics, have been a game changer. Take Jackson, a product manager at a consumer electronics company based in California. Jackson's company imports critical components from China, including semiconductors, processors, and camera modules. We've had to redesign entire product lines just to account for the new tariff costs, Jackson explains. The bottom line is that some of these products are now too expensive to sell, and we've had to rethink our approach entirely. The shift in the tech landscape has had ripple effects not just within the companies but in the lives of employees like Jackson. The job market in the tech sector, which was once booming, is now experiencing layoffs and hiring freezes as companies try to absorb higher production costs. Jackson has seen a number of colleagues either laid off or reassigned to different departments, a stark reminder that tariffs don't just affect bottom lines, they disrupt careers and livelihoods. The battle for steel, workers, feeling the weight of protectionism. Nowhere is the impact of the tariffs more visible than in industries like steel. For decades, American steel manufacturers faced stiff competition from countries like China, which flooded the market with cheap steel. In response, the US imposed tariffs to protect domestic industries, but this decision came with unintended consequences. Take Doug, a steelworker in Pittsburgh who has worked in the industry for over 20 years. When the tariffs were first introduced, we thought it was our time to shine, Doug recalls. We were told that the higher tariffs would protect American jobs and strengthen our steel production. But what happened next was a bit more complicated. While the tariffs did increase the demand for US steel in the short term, it also led to retaliatory tariffs on US exports. Many of the industries that depended on steel, automotive, construction, and manufacturing, faced increased production costs, which in turn led to fewer orders and slower business. The job growth that we expected never came, Doug says. In fact, some of our shifts were cut back, and now we're worried about even more layoffs. It feels like the protectionist measures meant to help us are actually harming us in the long run. The agricultural impact. Another area where tariffs have had a visible human impact is agriculture. US tariffs on foreign imports have led to retaliation from other countries, such as China, which imposed tariffs on US crops like soybeans and pork. This shift has had far-reaching consequences for farmers like Linda, a soybean farmer in the Midwest. It was a huge blow, Linda explains. China was one of our biggest buyers, and with the tariffs in place, we saw our sales drop dramatically. Farmers like me are trying to find new markets, but the competition is fierce and prices are low. While some farmers have found alternative markets in places like Brazil or Southeast Asia, Linda's story highlights the struggle many small-scale farmers are facing. The volatility created by these trade wars means farmers cannot predict their income from year to year, leaving them vulnerable to economic instability. As trade policies shift, so too do their livelihoods, forcing Linda and other farmers to navigate this uncertain landscape. The rise of tariff-protected markets. While many industries are reeling from the rise in tariffs, others are finding new opportunities. The US steel industry, for example, has benefited from tariffs by seeing an increase in demand for domestically produced steel. However, industries relying on steel, such as construction and automotive, have been forced to adjust their supply chains and look for alternative materials to offset the rising costs. In Brazil, where tariffs on American goods have opened up opportunities for local farmers, the country is also seeing an increase in the demand for minerals like lithium and cobalt. These minerals are essential for electric vehicles, EVs, and are becoming highly valuable as the world shifts toward green energy. Still, for every opportunity that arises, there is an equally challenging side to the coin. These industries must adapt, not just to changes in trade policy, but to the increasing demands for sustainability, labor rights, and environmental responsibility. The human cost of trade wars. At the end of the day, tariffs may benefit certain industries, but the human cost is impossible to ignore. From small business owners like Emma to tech workers like Jackson, and from steel workers like Doug to farmers like Linda, the 2025 tariffs are more than just numbers. They represent people, families, and communities whose lives have been shaped by global trade policies. Some businesses may find ways to thrive in this new environment, but for others, the costs may be too high. Tariffs have created a volatile economic climate that forces workers and industries to constantly adapt, often at great personal and professional cost. The US may have won some of its battles in the trade war, but it remains to be seen who will truly emerge victorious in the long run. While the US, China, and other large economies are often at the forefront of trade wars and tariff discussions, the impact stretches far beyond these countries. From tech giants in Taiwan to farmers in Brazil, the ripple effects of the 2025 tariffs have shaken global supply chains, affecting businesses and everyday lives across the world. Take Taiwan, for example. TSMC, the semiconductor giant responsible for producing over 90% of the world's chips, has been forced to make significant shifts due to growing pressure from the US to relocate its manufacturing to the US. The move is part of the US's broader push to reduce its dependence on Taiwan and China for vital tech components. But it's not just about tech and geopolitics. This decision is affecting people's livelihoods. In Taiwan, May, a semiconductor engineer, reflects on how the shifting dynamics have impacted her career. "It's strange," she says. "We've been building these chips for years, and now there's this push to move everything to the US. It means the company might reduce its workforce here, and many of my colleagues are worried about their future." May's story reflects the broader uncertainty facing Taiwan's tech sector. As TSMC moves some of its production to Arizona, Taiwan's workforce is left in a limbo, wondering what the next step is. Will there be layoffs? Or will the country be able to hold on to its semiconductor dominance despite the global trade changes? Meanwhile, in Arizona, US construction workers and engineers are scrambling to meet the demand for new semiconductor plants, reflecting how trade tensions are not only felt abroad, but are also creating new opportunities in the US. The growing focus on reshoring tech manufacturing presents both challenges and opportunities, creating a delicate balancing act for workers and businesses across the globe. In Japan, the effects are being felt most acutely in the auto industry. Japan's automakers, already struggling with the global supply chain crisis, now face even higher tariffs on their exports to the US. What does this mean for the average Japanese auto worker? Take Hiroshi, a production line worker at Toyota, who describes the uncertainty he feels. At first, we thought things would stabilize after the US imposed tariffs. But now, things are even worse. Our exports to the US are dropping, and many factories are looking to shift production to South Asia to cut costs. Hiroshi's factory, which has been a mainstay in Japan for years, is now considering new partnerships in India and Vietnam to stay competitive in the global market. This shift could lead to job losses in Japan, even as companies try to maintain their global presence by moving production to countries with cheaper labor. Japan's automakers aren't alone in this. Other manufacturers facing rising costs are looking towards South Asia, where labor costs are lower and trade restrictions are less stringent. Then, there's Brazil. While the world watches as Brazil becomes a key player in the global soybean market, it's not just about crops. The tariffs on US exports to China have opened the door for Brazil to step in, but it's also creating a whole new level of complexity for the country's agricultural workers. Antonio, a soybean farmer in southern Brazil, explains the growing tension he faces. When China stopped buying from the US, we saw our markets expand, he says. But now, with the rise of electric vehicles, EVs, and the growing need for lithium, there's a different pressure on us. Brazil, once focused on agriculture, is now a critical supplier of minerals like lithium and cobalt, essential for the EV revolution. This shift is having an impact on local communities. Antonio has seen his crop yields rise, but his cost of doing business has also increased. We're being asked to help with the shift to green energy. It's a great opportunity, but it comes with its own set of challenges, he admits. The increase in demand for lithium and cobalt has forced small-scale miners in Brazil to operate in more precarious conditions, impacting both the environment and the workforce. While the opportunity for economic growth is significant, it comes at a cost, one that many local workers, like Antonio, are forced to navigate carefully. These personal stories highlight how the 2025 tariffs are having a ripple effect far beyond the US, China, and other major players. While large corporations and governments make headlines, it's the everyday workers, farmers, engineers, and small business owners who are left grappling with the consequences. Their livelihoods, hopes, and futures are intertwined with global trade policies that are often beyond their control. The increasing complexity of global trade wars is shifting industries and labor markets, creating opportunities for some while leaving others behind. From Taiwan's semiconductor sector to Brazil's agricultural workers, the world is in flux, and so are the people who live within it. Trade wars may start in boardrooms and government offices, but their effects are felt deeply by the individuals and families who depend on the success of these industries. In the long run, some regions may thrive, while others fall behind. Taiwan's tech sector may continue to hold its ground, albeit with a reduced workforce. Japan's automotive giants may find new manufacturing partners in South Asia, but at the cost of domestic jobs. Brazil's agricultural sector may grow, but the country must balance this growth with the environmental and social consequences of mining for critical minerals. For businesses and workers around the world, the future is uncertain. However, adaptability and resilience will be key. Those who can pivot and adjust to these shifting global dynamics will emerge stronger, while those who cannot will face significant challenges. The world of global trade is shifting beneath our feet, and the unpredictable rhythm of tariffs has created turbulence that touches every corner of the globe. While the US-Mexico-Canada Agreement, USMCA, was supposed to bring stability and predictability to trade, President Trump's frequent and sudden tariff announcements threw a wrench into the works, creating a sea of uncertainty for manufacturers in both Canada and Mexico. But the story isn't just about big corporations. It's also about the everyday people, the workers, and the small businesses who are feeling the impact of these shifting tides. The hidden impact of tariffs, real stories of struggles and survival. In a small town in Ontario, John, a steelworker who has spent his entire life in the trade, recalls how his company's production costs skyrocketed when the US imposed tariffs on Canadian steel. "We used to send most of our products to the US," John says. "Now with the tariffs, we're forced to charge our American clients a premium and they don't want to pay it." This shift, he explains, has forced his factory to cut back on production. Many of his colleagues were laid off, leaving him with an uncertain future. John's story is one of many, as the Canadian steel industry, once a cornerstone of the nation's economy, faces unprecedented challenges. It's not just steel. Canada's lumber and aluminum industries also felt the pinch, as US tariffs on these goods created a ripple effect, affecting everyone from the factory floor to the small businesses that relied on these materials. Some businesses have tried to pivot to new markets, but the losses are hard to absorb. In Mexico, things are no better. Carlos, an automotive worker in a factory near the US-Mexico border, describes how trade tensions between the US and Mexico have put his job at risk. "One day we were told that production was slowing down due to tariffs on steel and aluminum. The next day we were laid off," Carlos says. "It was all tied to the trade policies. The uncertainty surrounding tariffs has created an environment where we just can't make long-term plans." Carlos's story isn't unique. The automotive industry, which thrives in Mexico due to lower labor costs and proximity to the US, has been hit hard by the constant fluctuation of tariffs. As Mexico has become a key player in the electric vehicle (EV) market, global trade wars have threatened not just jobs, but the future of Mexico's growing green tech sector. With tariffs on automotive parts, the region's competitive edge is at risk, forcing workers like Carlos to face an uncertain future. The shift in US tariffs has forced many businesses in Mexico to reconsider their strategies, some even looking to diversify their operations outside of North America. While this offers some protection against unpredictable trade policies, it also means fewer jobs in a country that has worked hard to position itself as a manufacturing powerhouse. Let's take a step into a local restaurant in Buffalo, New York, just a few miles away from the Canadian border. The restaurant, which has been serving up family recipes for decades, has seen a sharp drop in business since the tariff war began. The owner, Maria, says that her supply costs have doubled due to rising prices for imported goods like Canadian maple syrup and fresh vegetables from Mexico. "We've always prided ourselves on using locally sourced ingredients, but these tariffs are pushing prices higher, and our customers feel it," Maria shares. "Some of them even stopped coming because they can't afford the higher prices." The effects of trade wars are far-reaching. It's not just about big industries. Local restaurants, like Maria's, are feeling the pinch. The ripple effects of tariffs on everyday goods and services force businesses like hers to either absorb the costs or pass them on to their customers, who are already struggling with their own financial pressures. It's not just manufacturing sectors that are feeling the effects. In rural communities across both Canada and Mexico, farmers are bearing the brunt of trade wars. In Alberta, Canada, Mark, a soybean farmer, tells a similar story. "When the US started imposing tariffs on Chinese goods, we saw a dip in soybean exports. But now, with the EV push, the market for raw materials like lithium and cobalt is booming, and that's given us new hope." Meanwhile, in Mexico, farmers have faced a double blow, first from the steel tariffs, which raised the cost of agricultural tools and machinery, and now from global shifts in agriculture caused by trade disruptions. As the demand for green energy resources like lithium and cobalt grows, it has presented both challenges and opportunities for countries like Mexico and Brazil. The evolving tariff situation between the US, Canada, and Mexico is reshaping the future of North American manufacturing. To stay ahead, businesses must understand these complexities and adapt accordingly. Stay informed. Follow for more insights on how changing trade policies affect industries and economies. Analyze the trends. Understanding these shifts is essential for staying competitive. Take action now. Strategize for future investments, diversify, and explore new opportunities in emerging markets. Subscribe to the Time Navigator for detailed analyses and actionable strategies to navigate the complexities of North American trade dynamics.